What's up, fight fans, and welcome to episode number 3 of Trifecta Fight Picks. In today's episode, we take a look at the highly anticipated UFC 257 Poirier versus McGregor 2, a headliner with obvious title implications at the lightweight division. This card takes place this Saturday, January 23rd. Sorry, this one's coming a little late in the week. I had to completely scrap a fight and add another due to the cancellation of the Matt Frivola and Ottman Azaitar bout. Read into what happened if you don't know already, because it's pretty bizarre. You know what? I'll tell you what happened. So, dude from the Ottman Azaitar camp takes off his wristband, gives it to somebody that's not supposed to be in the building. Guy sneaks in with the bag, takes said bag, and Spider-Mans it down 4 stories, ends up on Azaitar's freaking balcony, drops the bag off, and takes off. Whole thing's caught on tape. What was in the bag? Nobody knows what's in the bag. Was it a bag full of IVs and steroids? Was it a McRib value meal? Nobody knows what was in the bag, but odds are it wasn't good the way the dude tried to James Bond and SEAL Team 6 the bag down on the balcony without getting caught. So, bout gets scrapped, dude gets cut from the UFC, and now we're doing this episode late. So all 7 of you guys that are going to see this video are now going to see it late, just because Azaitar is probably a cheater. So sorry about that. And Azaitar, thanks a lot, dummy. So, my name is Sean, and check out my channel description for more details on the name of the game here, but we're picking 3 winners on the card straight up, regardless of the betting odds. Quick recap of our last card. We had Chiesa versus Magny. Great card from start to finish. Manon Fiorot kicking off that card with a win. That was our first pick to win. Victoria Leonardo, super tough, but Fiorot was just too much for her like we thought, and scored the standing TKO finish in the second round. Our live dog in the next one, Jerome Rivera, he rallied late in the fight, but a little too late and was on the wrong side of a 29-28 scorecard. Congrats to champ Davison Figueiredo's little bro, Francisco, on the win there. Magny, we said Chiesa's only path to victory was to get Magny on his back and keep him there, and that's exactly what happened. I also didn't give Chiesa's stand-up game much credit. Much improved there from what we saw from him on the stand-up. So congrats to Chiesa on the win in that one. So that being said, 1 for 2, 2 cards in a row is definitely not okay. 2 and 4 on the year is trash. So I got some work to do. I'm going to have to turn this ship around if we're going to keep this going. So, moving along to our UFC 257 card. The first fight we're going to take a look at is a welterweight bout between Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Brad Tavares. A matchup that was previously scheduled for March of 2020 before all hell broke loose in the world. Carlos Jr., he brings an 11-4 record to the octagon and returns from a 2019 split decision loss to Uriah Hall. Tavares comes in at 17-7, steps back in the cage for the first time since a 2019 knockout loss to Edmund Shabazian. Both fighters on a 2-fight skid and look to get back into the win column. Brad Tavares, a longtime UFC veteran, very tough, fairly durable. He likes to stand and trade, a real fan-pleasing and entertaining fighter to watch more often than not, in my opinion. Still just 33 years old after it seems like he's been around a really long time. Brings a lot of fight miles into this one, so to speak. He's fought Phil Baroni, so that should tell you all you need to know about how long Brad Tavares has been around. Antonio Carlos Jr., a fellow middleweight with a brief track record of fights at both light heavyweight and at heavyweight. He actually won the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 3 as a heavyweight back in 2014. He's a world champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He likes to use his striking to set up his takedowns and look for the submission, but is by no means a slouch in the stand-up department. Carlos Jr., he's been battle-tested against some really good strikers and guys with heavy hands, to name a few. He beat current title contender Marvin Vettori. He beat Tim Bosch and was able to hang in there with both Ian Heinisch and Uriah Hall. That leads me to believe he should be able to hang in there with Tavares on the feet. Carlos Jr. also brings a 5-inch reach advantage into this fight. Kudos to Brad Tavares for going 5 rounds with a seemingly unstoppable champ, Israel Adesanya. But we're talking 2.5 years ago on that one already. He looked sharp and ready early in his last fight against Shabazian, but was caught and finished in the first. So to put it lightly, I think we're seeing the Brad Tavares that's in the second half of his career. Vegas odds makers currently have Tavares set up as a slight favorite at a -135, with Carlos Jr. coming in as a +110 underdog. I really think we've already seen the best version of Brad Tavares and have yet to see the best version of Antonio Carlos Jr. And all things considered, the pick for this fight is Antonio Carlos Jr. at a +110 to score the upset victory. Tavares' path to victory here is to keep this one standing and to catch Carlos Jr. with his big shots. But I see Carlos Jr. eventually capitalizing on an opportunity to get this one to the mat and controlling the fight there, possibly scoring another submission finish. So the first pick on this card, Antonio Carlos Jr. at plus 110 over Brad Tavares. So we head on to the main card for our second fight and the co-main event for a lightweight matchup between Dan the Hangman Hooker versus Iron Mike Chandler. Hooker coming in with a record of 20-9, and Chandler makes his UFC debut with a record of 21-5. Very excited for this fight and glad to see Chandler making the move over to the UFC. But talk about a tough draw for your first fight. Dan Hooker, another guy here that will flat out stand and trade, comes in every fight ready to brawl. Heavy-handed, probably one of the best chins in all of MMA. Watching the shots this guy takes and still be able to dish out the punishment he does is pretty incredible. Has an underrated ground game, in my opinion, and has 7 submission wins under his belt. Does very well defending takedowns, and we'll touch more on that in a bit. Michael Chandler, former lightweight champion in Bellator, looks to be in the title contender picture in the UFC right away. Comes into this fight on a 2-fight winning streak after suffering a knockout loss and losing his title to Patricio Pitbull over in Bellator. The first thing I'll mention here is a phrase MMA fans will hear quite often, is that there are levels to the fight game. So right away, Dan Hooker stands out as far as having the advantage there. He's proven himself time and time again in the UFC, and in his most recent, had a fight of the year style war against current title contender Dustin Poirier. Michael Chandler, I definitely think his record and skill set deserve to be considered UFC caliber, but we won't know exactly where he stands until after this fight, and it's safe to say he was willing to test that by accepting this fight with Hooker, and I definitely admire that. But the damage that Hooker's willing to take, it's fair to wonder when that's all going to catch up with him. You go back to the beating he took against Barboza, but he comes back to win 3 straight, and then that decision loss to Poirier, which was also a war. I'm going to say he's in the prime of his career. It's still very durable. We haven't quite seen a decline there in his durability just yet. Chandler, there's definitely no knocking the stand-up game. Very quick, very agile, very, very athletic, and he's put on, he's put some lights out himself in the stand-up department. Has knocked some dudes out. Fights like a wrecking ball. He's going to have the obvious advantage with his wrestling, I think, should he be able to get this fight to the ground. As for the pick, very, very close fight here, as well as the odds will also suggest. Dan Hooker coming in is a minus 140 favorite, and Michael Chandler, the plus 110 underdog. The way I see this fight playing out, there will be one point or another where Chandler decides he no longer wants to stand and bang with Hooker, whether it's 10 seconds into the fight or round 2 or 3. He's going to try to get this fight to the ground and put Hooker on his back because he has to in order to win this fight. Even then, Hooker will look for the submission and is more than comfortable on the mat if he sees an opportunity. I think Hooker's 77% takedown defense will come into play here, and he'll keep the fight in his control and on the feet, which Chandler's chin won't be able to handle for very long. So the pick here is Dan Hooker at a minus 140 to get the win. I believe Chandler belongs in the UFC and will have success, but biting off a little more than he can chew here in his UFC debut. And props to him for taking this matchup when he himself noted that it's a bad matchup for him stylistically. But Dan Hooker gets the win here at minus 140. For the third fight to round out the trifecta for the card, we take on the main event, a rematch between two of the absolute best in the world at 155 pounds, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. Two guys that don't need much of an introduction, and I'll speak on some of the intangibles to consider in a bit. Dustin Poirier, former interim lightweight title holder, comes in 26-6 with 1 no contest, finishes in 19 of those 26 wins, has a track record of fighting the absolute killers and the who's who in both the lightweight and featherweight divisions. Conor McGregor, 22-4, former double champ at both featherweight and lightweight. Fights for the first time in almost exactly a year after his 42nd beatdown over Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Dustin Poirier, the dude finished Justin Gaethje with strikes. I mean, and anyone who does that is he's got absolute gangster status for life. There's no denying that as a fight fan. Now, will the best Dustin Poirier show up ready for war on Saturday? I think so. Can he win this fight? Absolutely. I think his best chance, without a doubt, is to make it a dogfight and drag Conor into deep waters and into the later rounds. But I think that might be a lot easier said than done at this stage of Conor's career. One more thing I wanted to mention about Conor before I pick here is the way he carries himself leading up to the fight. And I think we've seen two very distinct versions of Conor leading up to the fight. So the first, very outspoken, loud, aggressive, obnoxious, slinging insults during the press conferences, also slinging the occasional monster can and water bottle at the Diaz camp. This is the Conor that we saw get gassed and choked out by Nate Diaz in their first fight. The Conor that got pieced up in the boxing ring against Mayweather, and the Conor that got dropped, neck cranked, and tapped by Khabib. Now, I'm not saying that version of Conor can't win fights, because he has. He absolutely can. But the second version of Conor we see leading up to his fights, focused, soft-spoken, a bit stoic even at times, calm during the stare downs, much more in the zone. This is the Conor that bounced back to win the rematch with Nate Diaz, the Conor that destroyed Eddie Alvarez and became the double champ, and the Conor that absolutely mauled Cowboy Cerrone in his last fight. And that's the Conor that's showing up this Saturday. He's also more shredded than I think we've ever seen him, and while that may or may not matter at all, it's at least a testament to where his head's at and how seriously he's approaching this fight. So, what it comes down for me in this fight, you can argue that the last fight was forever ago and that they're both different fighters and much better versions of themselves. I would totally agree with all of that. But the best Conor McGregor still beats the best Dustin Poirier. Sorry, Dustin, and you have a delicious hot sauce? This stuff is really good. No, really, especially on chicken. Please try it. But before I turn this into a hot sauce commercial about Dustin Poirier's delicious hot sauce, available on heatness.com, where they're running a promotion right now for the first 300 to buy the hot sauce, gets a free signed sticker from Dustin Poirier. I swear I'm not getting paid for any of this. I just love fights and hot sauce. Anyways, the pick here, the notorious Conor McGregor to win and close the show at a minus 300. And I'll go a step further and guess that he calls out Khabib afterwards, but we all know he's going to do that. To recap our picks and our trifecta for this card, we got Antonio Carlos Jr. at a plus 110. We got Dan the Hangman Hooker at minus 140. And we got the notorious Conor McGregor at minus 300. We'll show you the parlay payout like always, should you choose to step outside of those straight bets and into the dark side with your boy. A $100 bet is going to pay you almost 4-to-1 odds, winning about $380 for a total payout of $480. Solid, solid, solid. Third episode's a charm, so I think we finally cracked 3 for 3 here, guys. But we know anything can happen in the octagon, so please bet at your own risk, though I'm sure you already knew that. You can check out the real-time odds at bestfightodds.com, and you'll see what the different books out there are currently offering in terms of your betting odds. So, now that I've given you my fight pick trifecta for this card, give me your trifecta of a like, a subscribe, and drop a comment in the comment box below. I'd love to hear your picks or hear what you think about this card as always. We take a bit of a break until the next card, but we'll see you guys again next month when we take on a UFC Fight Night card featuring Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov. Thank you for watching, enjoy the fights, and let's go get that money. This is the card, guys. Hot sauce. See you guys.